Hey, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again, everybody's favorite segment. It has been 2 weeks since our last one, thanks to an all-star break, home run derby. 10 games, 9 games for most teams that have passed in over these past 2 weeks. So we're going to go through all 30 teams as per usual. A little bit more of a shuffle than usual because there's that extra series, 3 series for every team in here. It's been pretty fun, and we're starting to see some real teams that have come out to be contenders that coming into this season you may not have thought. Other teams that we thought were contending back in July when I did my playoff prediction video are starting to really fall out. So that video always seems to just fall apart within a month of doing, which is always fun to watch. But guys, we're going to jump right into it. But right before I do, I just want to remind everyone at 1,700 subscribers, we are going to be doing another giveaway for a hat here on the channel. We do a couple a year, and it's about time to do one. We're about 70 subscribers away. I think we can maybe do it this week, if not next week. So if that does happen, we will be doing some sort of giveaway for a hat of your choice. But let's just jump into it again, going through all 30 teams. Going to quickly talk about the bottom row because it relatively stays the same. Colorado Rockies. You do want to give them a benefit of a doubt because they did win 2 out of the 3 series this week, and that's pretty much all. 2-1 against Minnesota, 2-1 against St. Louis, and 1-2 against Baltimore. So no sweeps, which is kind of a new story for Colorado. But we got to remember, this is Colorado. They are setting pace records for worst run differential ever, worst record ever. Couple series wins aren't really going to change that because everyone in the bottom row managed to, I think, find some series wins along the way. And at the same time, the rest of the season has not been as bad. So I'm not going to move Colorado out from the bottom row just because they had one decent week. Number 29, in my opinion, making some arguments that they might not be the second worst team, may not be deserving of this spot, but I think at the end of the day, they are going to be the weakest team in the American League, which kind of helps concrete this number 29 decision. 3-0 against the Pirates to start the week off after the All-Star break. A lot of excitement there. Followed up winning another series, so they're 5-1 in their first 6 games after the All-Star break, beating Tampa Bay. And then this weekend, they played a pretty tough series against Chicago Cubs, stealing one of the 3 matchups. So overall, the White Sox had a pretty good showing, and we're seeing some aspects of this rotation starting to take form to be somewhat of a threat against the middling team. So I think the Chicago White Sox do have an argument to move up. But at the same time, trade deadline coming up quickly. I think they are going to move some of those pieces, which are what I think are leading to a lot of their wins. Number 28, kind of leaving them in the same spot. They kind of went under the radar for me over these past 10 days. 1-2 against San Diego, 2-1 against the Reds, and 2-1 over the weekend against Minnesota. So another team in this bottom row. So all 3 of these teams in the bottom 3 won 2 out of the 3 series that they played. So just goes to show after a little bit of a break, these teams are coming out firing. The bottom row, while they are there, they are going to be competitive more times than not. So got to keep that in mind. Number 27. I dropped them down, and it's just some ugliness coming around this team as of late. And they maybe bounced back a little bit over the weekend playing Colorado, winning that series, and having that one game where they put up, I think, 18 runs, 18-0 or whatever it was. I kind of shut that game off. But other than that, 1-2 against Tampa Bay, the team they're chasing in their division for the 4th spot, and in my opinion, a team that has been struggling quite significantly. 1-3 against Cleveland, another team that has somewhat struggled and was on the latter cusp of the wild card, maybe making their way back into it. Baltimore has kind of shown that in the American League and not really that competitive, and by far the worst team in the American League East kind of landed them in this spot. Number 26. I have the Pittsburgh Pirates kind of just floating in the same spot after getting swept to start the post-All-Star break by the White Sox. I really considered moving them to 29, but they bounced back in a big way, going 5-1 in their next 6 games. They swept the Detroit Tigers, which was a lot to my surprise, and then they go 2-1 against Arizona, winning the rubber match. And Skeens continues to make that case to be the candidate in the Cy Young on the National League side. Of course, we're seeing rumors of him being traded. I don't think there's any shot of that happening unless there's just some crazy, insane package going in return. But I think they'd be silly to even consider it. But the Pirates right now, I think we've seen some moments in the past at least 6 games where their offense is starting to come alive a little bit, and maybe Skeens is going to pick up a couple of wins along the way here. But at 26, I don't think they're going to end up moving out of this bottom row. Number 25, a new addition to the bottom row, and a team that I did predict to make the playoffs back in that July video. The Minnesota Twins, just everything does not seem to be going well for them. 1-2 against Colorado, 1-2 against the Dodgers, 1-2 against Washington. So they lost 2 series to the bottom row. Teams kind of entered their way into this bottom row conversation. Losing to the Dodgers, maybe not surprised. They didn't get swept, so it seems like they are the kind of team that hasn't really gone on losing streaks. We did see back in May where they went on a pretty solid winning streak and did allow them to climb up the board at one point, but it just seems like with the rest of the teams in the Central being a little bit more winning as of late, they've kind of made it, in my opinion, they're 4th in the division, and arguably the White Sox are on their tail to be competitive in matches against each other. Number 24, another team we never thought coming into the season they would be here, and I was actually debating them being in the number 25 spot. They've just been that bad this season. I figured when players started to come back that maybe they'd be able to figure it out a little bit, but they just have not. 1-2 against the Yankees, 1-2 against San Fran, 0-3 against Texas for an overall 2-7 record over the first 9 games coming back from the break. Just not going to be good enough. I thought they might have a chance to get back in the wild card race, and at this point, their season's as good as done, I would figure. Braves just, I don't know. Number 23. On the back of a 4-0 sweep of Houston this weekend, I moved them up out of the bottom row with a lot of the Nick Kurt stuff and his amazing game that went on. Considered just because of that one game putting on the Athletics hat today, but the Pirates did win out because I haven't worn a Pirates hat like all year. It feels like I never get a chance, and I just thought it went well with this new sweater I got. So that's pretty much the reason that. But the A's seem to be that team on fire. They did come out of the break going 1-2 against Cleveland, 0-3 against Texas. So it's like 1-4, but they bounced back with a massive series win. And while other teams might have had better records coming into the All-Star break, I just think the pieces and the youngness of this Athletics team just coincide to a better performance over the next couple of months and closing out the year. I don't know what kind of players are really going to be moving out. A lot of young guys on this team, and it's a team looking to build for the future as they move into Vegas. So I think this is a team on the trending up, whereas some of these other teams I'm not so certain about. Number 22, I think one of the biggest fallers, at least maybe not since last power rankings, but over the past 3 weeks, biggest faller on this board by far. 2-2 against San Diego over the weekend. Not exactly a terrible series, but to lose to Colorado in the middle there, and they got swept coming out of the gate against Arizona, a team that has struggled on their own, and kind of coincides with what I talked about in the prior videos, that St. Louis just seems to be that team that's slowly going to fall out of this race. Early on in the season, I talked about often, I wasn't sure how St. Louis was pulling off the records and being in that conversation that they were. They just kept winning. They were winning against good teams. But I think it finally started catching up to them, and we're kind of reaching that point now at number 22, kind of where you would expect them to be coming into the season. Sonny Gray kind of not having the best outings this past couple of weeks either. So those kind of things when they were relying on some of their aces and starting pitching to carry those games has not worked out as of late. Number 21, just talked about them, how they swept the Cardinals. That kind of made the difference in these two guys, but both of these teams not really on their way to the postseason. If anyone's going to make it, I think it's Arizona clearly has the better chance, but going 3-0 against St. Louis, followed that up by 0-3 against Houston and 1-2 against Pittsburgh. Just not making the conversation possible for you to really start believing that this team is going to be able to put it all together. On top of that, them starting to trade off some of their players. We saw Grichuk go over the past, was it last night or the day before? And of course, Josh Naylor, we saw him go already as well. So they're clearly kind of throwing in the towel in the season. So in the same aspect, I kind of am too. Number 20, falling from grace. I think they were as high as 7 what feels like only a month ago, but it just has not gone their way. 0-3 this weekend over against Cincinnati Reds. Lose to Cleveland in the middle of the week there. Not Cleveland, the Chicago White Sox, lose that series. Almost got swept in that one. They were 1 run away, almost blew it in the ninth in that game. And on top of that, they did beat Baltimore. So I am still giving them the edge over Baltimore, but that also plays into why Baltimore is where they are. Tampa Bay, they maybe were running a little bit on miracles, a lot like St. Louis earlier in the season. Maybe it's catching up to them a little bit. But at the same time, they still play their division very strong. They're not completely out of it. This wild card race is still alive and well in them. But the pitching just isn't keeping up to what it was doing at the beginning of the season. Number 19. Trying to claw and fight their way back into this race, sticking around 500. I think I saw an interesting stat on the Guardians come out. I think it was on X. I shared it on our Discord. Just basically about how they are just 500 when all these different increments over the past year, like it was past 20 games, past 40 games, past whatever. But overall, like just kind of being that middling team, and it's kind of what I've been talking about very consistently on this channel. They always seem to have that solid pitching, and they are very competitive. But the big losing streak that they went on a couple of weeks ago really set them behind the pace in the wild card. They are trying to get back into it, and I think they are doing the right things, and they're working their way back up the board. And then 2-1 against the Athletics, 3-1 against Baltimore, for losing a series which I think they really wanted to win, and they really should have won against Kansas City Royals this weekend with back-to-back doubleheader being split yesterday and then losing today. So I think that was a big difference maker, of course, in being where they are there, because number 18 is that Kansas City Royals team. These two teams are very close in terms of skill, in terms of pitching, all that stuff. So when they're playing each other, it's going to be really what comes down to be the difference maker. Both these teams are not going to be able to make the playoffs. I think if anything, one central team is going to get out other than Detroit at this rate. So those two guys are fighting for it. But as you can see on the power rankings, I do have it quite a ways away. 2-1 against the Cubs and 1-2 earlier in the week against Miami. So overall, 500-ish week for Kansas City, but for them to get back in the race, we're going to have to see a kind of run that we've seen a lot of the teams ahead of them do at one point or another in this season. We just haven't seen the Royals really string together the kind of win streak that gets you back in the playoff race. Like I'm talking like a 10, 11, 12 game win streak. Kind of what I think it's going to take for the Royals or the Guardians to get back in this race. Number 17. This team seems to be skyrocketing. If you pay attention to the bottom half of this board while watching these power rankings, you would know that they're probably the best moving team up this board over the past month. Marlins have just become that team that is a nuisance to play against. Offensively, they do deliver. They have a lot of young guys, and Sowers is playing pretty amazing along with some other guys. Their pitching rotation has been pretty solid through 1 through 5, so that has kept them in all the games, and they just seem to be that pestering team that has potential. I almost made this call a couple of weeks ago. I wish I did, because I still think it's very much the case going to happen. Miami is going to end this season above 500. It's only a matter of time. 2-1 against Kansas City, 2-1 against San Diego, 2-1 against Milwaukee. 3 series win, no sweeps. You'd like to start seeing some sweeps from this team, but overall, can't complain about a 6-3 record since the All-Star break. If it wasn't for the kind of start they had and the teams in the National League that they're going to have to hop, I think they would be able to make a run at the playoffs. But I think 17, we're going to start seeing a peak of the Marlins, but I wanted to get ahead of the ball. Number 16, 2-2 against Seattle after salvaging today. They almost could have lost this series. They did win the one game in extra innings. 2-1 against Atlanta. Sorry, wrong game here. 0-3 against the New York Mets, and then 2-1 against Philly. So interesting playing in the National League East. We're going to get to them in the top row, but the National League East is one of my higher ranked divisions. So pretty good to play solid there. Tough series to come out of the All-Star break for this team that is trying to make it in this division. American League West, a little bit stacked with Texas starting to get hot as well. So I think they're going to fall a little bit short, but overall, somewhat solid week. But they need to do better if they're going to move off the board. Otherwise, we're going to have some teams that are hungry right behind them. Next up, number 15, at the San Francisco Giants. They kind of feel like they've been cursed since this Devers trade, because ever since that happened, they've fallen, I think they were around 7, so about 8 spots on the board. 0-3 against Toronto coming out of the break. 2-1 against Atlanta, and then we had 0-2 so far against the Mets. And if you're new to this channel, I do this video. I record it before the Sunday Nighter, so they do have one game left against the Mets tonight. It's about to kick off. Might have already kicked off already as I'm filming this. But they are 0-2 there, and it just seems like the pitching has been solid, but the runs have not been able to get the support. And realistically, the pitching has let them down in a couple of spots as of late as well. So while they're right there in the playoff race, the trend is not good, looking good for San Fran, as other teams have been able to perform a little bit better. Number 14, they have entered the conversation, now winning 6 games in a row. The Rangers have been resurrected. I don't exactly know what it was, but they're on back-to-back sweeps. Swept Atlanta over the weekend, swept Athletics in the middle there, and then they started 2-1 against Detroit, a team that going into the All-Star break was the number 1 team in the American League. So Texas has had an amazing start. 8-1, I think it might be the best record percentage-wise since the All-Star break. So we got to keep an eye on Texas overall coming into the season. They had playoff expectations, and they have been able to enter that conversation again, at least right now, with Seattle not playing lights out baseball, and we saw over the weekend Houston struggle, and we'll talk about them in a minute. Number 13, San Diego Padres just kind of feels like that team that's sticking around, at least in that playoff conversation. And while they haven't done anything this season that really wows you, other than maybe the start in April, they've stuck around, and that's enough you can say in this marathon of a season. If you can get into the playoffs, San Diego is that team, I think, that could shock. It's not a team that is not capable of beating the top teams in this board. 2-2 against St. Louis, 1-2 against Miami, 2-1 against Washington. So overall, 500 week out of 10 games, 5-5. It's not going to be enough if they maintain that to get them in, I don't think. But right now they are in that conversation. I think they really want to sort out their starting rotation because the depth is starting to cause some trouble, especially with Yu Darvish as of late. Number 12, entering the top 2 row conversation. I think 2 months ago I had a comment on the board that talked about how it was only a matter of time before they were in the top 2 rows. And when that comment was posted, the Reds went on a pretty big skid, and I think they've stuck in this row for weeks. But now they've made it. Whoever made that comment, if you're still around and you finally made it, they are here. 3-0 against Tampa Bay over the weekend kind of cemented that situation. Winning the series after the All-Star break against the Mets 2-1 helped cement it. This team is very capable, and I think in this National League Central, which is starting to turn out to be one of the strongest divisions, and starting to give a little bit of credit even with when you have teams in the bottom like the Pirates there, still getting it done. I think the Pirates on a given day are going to be super competitive. So the Reds have to show, that's the one thing, and it's been the one sticking point for me all season, win in the division. We didn't see it in this little snippet here because they didn't have any division games. They're going to have a lot coming up, and it's going to be against the Cubs, it's going to be against the Brewers, and those are going to be the ones that are going to help cement them, whether or not they're going to be a playoff team. Number 11, if you would have said after they traded Devers, they'd move up the board and San Francisco would move down the board, I would have called you crazy. I think anyone who watched this would have called you crazy, but that is just how it has played out. 1-2 against the Cubs, 1-2 against Philly, and then this weekend they beat the Dodgers 2-1. So overall, a losing 10 games, but I want to keep this in perspective that they were playing 3 of the best teams in the National League, arguably, in that stretch, and they didn't get swept. They kept the games super close. Maybe the Cubs games were a little bit of 6-1, 6-0 kind of things. But at the end of the day, this team is competitive. They do have some top aces, which is key because some of these teams ahead of them don't necessarily have a solid ace that they can rely on in these 3-game sets. So I think Boston is positioned in a position where they're going to be on their way to a wild card spot, especially with number 10 being one of the strugglingest teams as of late. I think I saw a stat floating around, maybe it was on the Discord as well, how the Yankees had less wins. I forget the time frame, but it included the Rockies, the White Sox, and other low-hanging fruit there. I think it might have been just shortly before the All-Star break, but either way, the Yankees have been in a little bit of a struggle. They avoided the sweep today, which I think is going to play big. They win a close 4-3 game against the Phillies, lose the series 1-2. They lose the series to Toronto in the middle there as well, and that was a highly anticipated series, especially after getting swept 4 games. That ends up being that they are going to lose the tiebreaker overall to Toronto as well. So I think they have fallen at least 4 games back in that division, starting the post-All-Star break as well. 2-1 against Atlanta. The big question mark, of course, right now for the Yankees is what's going to happen with Judge. We do see him go elbow strain going on the IL. How long that's going to be? Are they going to be able to perform without him? They haven't. I think they got a 4-game lead right now in the wild card, so they do have a little bit of cushion to work with. I do expect Rodon, Fried, these guys are going to help deliver the wins necessary to get into the playoffs. So that's why they kind of are still in that top 10 in my books. Number 9. Just kind of saying, I think these three all stayed in the exact same spot, I believe. But Seattle kind of just played a pretty solid couple of series here. 2-2 against the Angels. We kind of touched on that already. They had a really good position to win that series. They win a series against Houston, coming right out of the All-Star break. They had fallen quite a few games back. I think it was 7-ish, but they have managed to close that gap to, I believe, 4 after today. But Seattle losing to Milwaukee in the middle there. Overall, they had a tough schedule coming out of the break, and they managed to do all right. I want to see what they can do building on this. They made the addition of Josh Naylor. So far, he hasn't done anything amazingly impactful, but it's only a matter of time. And I would suspect that we might see some more stuff happening in Seattle. At the very least, they are in this playoff race. They're in the conversation. And if they get in, they're going to be a lethal American League team. Number 8, falling drastically on this board. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was quite hesitant for a while to put them at the number 1 spot. I got a lot of hate for it for a while. They eventually did work their way up to number 1 on this board, because more than not, they were continuing to win while other teams just weren't as consistent. But I think we finally saw a little dose of reality of the Tigers over the past 14 games here. I think they are 2-12, something along those lines. But really struggling to get offensive going. And I think that was maybe some of the concern. We saw a little bit maybe of a facade early with Baez having pretty much a career year that we hadn't seen out of him in a little while. They were missing Kerry Carpenter there for a little while too. He came back today. But overall, 1-3 against Toronto, 0-3 against Pittsburgh, 1-2 against Texas. So they lost all 3 series since the break. Just picking up 2 wins and losing 8. So 2-8 overall. I think, like I said, 12-2. 12 losses out of their last 14. So Detroit, a little bit of struggle. Of course, they always going to have Skubal going out there every 5 days, which is going to be very impactful. And we saw Flaherty pitch a gem today. So if he can keep that up, this team's very much on pace to win this American League Central. But the concern, of course, comes now is whether or not they're going to be able to compete with some of the top teams in the American League. But you're going to see in a moment that the American League is a little bit tight here. Number 7, dropping out of the top row, do have the LA Dodgers, and it's just been a pitching nightmare for them as of late. 1-2 against Boston, 2-1 against Minnesota, a team that did bounce down to the bottom row, so they win a series there. And they came out of the break and got swept by the Milwaukee Brewers, which actually led to 0-6 against the Milwaukee Brewers over the past 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, whenever they played their other series. The Dodgers just not being able to put things together, and it's starting to be probably what more their identity is going to be like. Sure, we all came into the season expecting them to be World Series favorites, expecting them to run away with the National League West. Very much still probably the case, with 13 being the closest on here, and probably the lowest the Dodgers are going to go is in this scenario. But the Dodgers have struggled, and it's not been the kind of runaway freight train that you would have thought the Dodgers were going to be coming in this season. On top of that, the top 6 teams, in my opinion, just are a little bit better. And if they face the Dodgers in a 5-game set right now, I would be picking those teams. Number 6, dropping a few more spots from the peak of a couple of weeks ago is the Houston Astros. 0-4 against the Athletics. They started losing to Seattle, kind of making that gap not as big. It's still a somewhat big gap, but I do have concerns whether they can hold that at this point. They did manage to sandwich those 2 series with a sweep of Arizona, which is going to help that bolster them a little bit. But a sweep there and then following up by getting demolished. It wasn't even like they just lost all 4 games to Athletics. They pretty much got destroyed in them. And as we all know, probably if you made it this far in this video, the Nick Kurtz game setting like records upon records as possibly the best game ever, right? So Houston's in this scenario. Well, they did hold the best record in the American League for a little bit. It didn't last very long, and maybe it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors. But they need to get some of their guys healthy to really demonstrate what is this team really going to be capable of. The rotation, not exactly what you would thought and what we've seen in the past as of late. So Houston, what are they going to do at the trade deadline? Because we all know they're going to do something. That's going to be interesting to watch. And at number 5, quite possibly the highest this team has ever been on this power rankings board. I'm a little bit hesitant to put them this high, but at the same time, I kind of have to. This team has delivered more than any other team over the past 2 months. 3-0 against San Fran, 2-1 against the Yankees, 3-1 against Detroit. So overall, 5-1 against American League teams that are in the top 10 over these past, including playing Rodon, Fried, and Skubal in that span. So a lot of credit going there. When you start to look at the Jays, it feels a little bit overperformance of what you would expect. If you look at some expected numbers, they're delivering higher than what is expected. But at the same time, this team is playing out of their minds, and they're playing with momentum, and they're playing with angst. And right now, they are holding the best record in all of MLB. So you got to give them a little bit of credit. But while people always go into the comments and say they're the best team in the MLB, they have the best record, blah, blah, blah. If I was just doing the standings, sure, they'd be at number 1. But I don't. That's not what power rankings are about. It's about projecting this team out. How are they going to compete going forward? Are they really playing what their record is? Or what is it, right? And when I start to look at it, sure, you might notice at now all of the American League teams are on the board. So yes, I do consider the Blue Jays to be the strongest team in the American League at this given moment. And arguably, you could kind of look at the records. They hold the tiebreaker, I think, against almost every major team that will be in this playoff race. Yankees, Seattle, and now hold it over Detroit after winning this series. I know they have it over Cleveland. So, just keeping that in mind, Athletics for sure. So, those are just things I know off the top of my head. But when we start, in my opinion, matching them up in the World Series moment, playing against some of these National League teams, I just don't know if they have what it takes to be in the top 4. Hey, we're going to see them play some of these teams. They haven't played the Dodgers. They haven't played the Cubs. They haven't played the Brewers yet. So when they go start playing some of these National League teams, it'll be interesting. But we have seen them play number 4, Philly. And when they played Philly, it was not pretty. At the same time, it was France's time, but it was not pretty for them. So Philly had a pretty decent week. 1-2 against the Dodgers, 2-1 against Boston, 2-1 against the Yankees. So 4-2 against the American League East. And it's just kind of going into what I was talking about. I do think the National League kind of holds the cards when they start playing top teams versus top teams. I can't even remember who won the All-Star game at this point. I do believe it was the National. I can't even remember. It's great. I know it was, went into a home run. Oh, yeah, home runs. Went into the home runs at the end there, right? With Schwarber and all that. So that kind of, it's close, All-Star. But Philly's in at number 4. And in at number 3, I have the New York Mets. Mets are one of those teams that are on a little bit of a streak. They're on a 6-game winning streak. 2-0 against San Fran, 3-0 against the Angels. And then they did lose 1-2 against Cincinnati. But part of what's playing into this, these two teams have very, very close records. And when it comes down to this, I got to kind of look, where do I think this is projecting out to the end of the season? Do I think the Mets are going to have the division, but when all is said and done? At this point in time, I do. So that is what is pretty much leading out into the edge. Of course, these guys are going to be playing their division. They're going to be battling. There's lots of games to be played. In my opinion, can change on the matter. But right now, I have the Mets as just the stronger team overall than the Phillies. The Phillies just sometimes seem very inconsistent. And we've seen it in the past number of years. Of course, there is the old saying that Mets are going to Met, but we'll see how that goes. And that brings us to number 2. I have the Chicago Cubs. And the Cubs are holding on to a top 5 spot, I think, for majority of the season. 2-1 against Boston, 1-2 against the Royals, 2-1 against the White Sox. Overall, Cubs very arguably, I had considered for a long time who I was going to put at number 1. I did consider the Cubs. They were the only other team I did consider. But what it came down to, again, kind of the same conversation as what I did with Philly and New York. I'm just going to throw these guys up there. I'll give them their dues in a second. But it came down to the same thing. Where do I see these guys kind of projecting in the long run? I do know Milwaukee and the Cubs play each other in a 2-game set this week. 2 games. Milwaukee's at home. Not really going to be a big gauge of what's going on, I don't think, depending on who's pitching and all that. But they do have a 5-game set. I think it's like 2.5 weeks away. That 5 games is going to be big. And so when I'm kind of coming down to these last 2, I'm like, which one is it going to be? Which one's it going to be? I lean Milwaukee because in those 7 games, I'm like, hey, they're going to see their best on best for 7 games. I think Milwaukee has the edge, and I think they're going to come out with the advantage there. The Cubs do have the 5 games at their home, so that is going to be there. So let's just give Milwaukee their dues. They have made it to number 1. Don't think it's the first time ever. I do think they did make it for at least 1 week last year. I can't recall, though. If you do know, let me know. 3-0 against the Dodgers, 2-1 against Seattle. They fell short this weekend against Miami. Avoided a sweep with a nice comeback win today. But I think we need to look at the little bit of a longer stretch for Milwaukee. They've erased what was a massive division lead of the Cubs. They got Woodruff back recently, who is arguably the ace of this rotation, and with him and the new young guy as well, like they have just basically added 2 big pitching arms right here at the deadline, and probably have a little bit of excess in pitching and might be able to add even another bat. Andrew Vaughn probably not the solution that they are looking for, but of course they're making moves. At this point, I think the real thing here is the picture, right? We got 4 teams in the National League. Kind of given that I think the National League is a stronger division. I've kind of been preaching that all season long. But yeah, top 12 teams, bottom row, all that fun stuff. I am excited to see how the comments take this power rankings, because it's quite a bit of a shuffle of what we've seen in the past. That's what can happen when 10 games are played. You get a little bit of a better idea, especially with that all-star break in there. So guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know if I'm just completely out to lunch on some of this stuff, or what you agree on. And let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget, like, subscribe, the giveaway, etc., etc. And we will see you for that next video.